Hello everybody, I am Chris VanMeter and welcome to my Introduction to Hex video. For those of you who follow me on social media, either from my Magic the Gathering career or my written content for Magic, you might have seen me in the last couple of months post a lot about Hex TCG and how much fun I'm having playing the game in all the different formats, be it constructed, draft, sealed, or even the PvE campaign. I've had a lot of people reach out to me after I wrote my introductory article that they'd be interested to see a video that kind of went over the same things, as well as listed out and showed how gameplay actually works for the game. So for those of you who are just stumbling across this video looking to learn about Hex, I hope you enjoy. The very first bit that I want to go over in this game is the resource system. Whenever you try to play a TCG, the most integral part of it is the resource system and how you utilize the resource system to actually play the cards, and it kind of drives the way the game works. Hex uses a threshold along with temporary and permanent resource system, which is a little different from what I was used to in Magic the Gathering, so this is what kind of took me the longest to try and catch on to. But once I figured it out, it was really easy and allowed me to not only take advantage of the resource system with how you build your deck and how you play the games, but it also helps you kind of figure out how the game is being designed, how the cards are being designed, and even try and see, where the possibilities are going to be in the future. So the resource system that Hex uses is called Shards, and there are 5 different colors of shards in Hex, similar to the 5 different colors in Magic. One of the things that was really easy for me to transition from Magic into Hex is that the shards in Hex have very similar color identities to the colors in Magic. So Ruby in Hex is similar to red in Magic, where it's just kind of all about aggression, burn, things with speed or haste, as well as some random elements and getting temporary benefits to try and end the game before the detriment comes from it. So Ruby has a lot of cards that either makes everybody draw some cards and then discard random cards, or will allow you to draw some cards now, but you have to use them before the end of the turn, otherwise you have to discard them. So the color identities were real easy for me to make the transition over to. But let's look at the shards first. So as we see here, we have a Ruby shard, and this is, it gives you 1/1 resources, and you gain a Ruby threshold, and then you gain a charge. So there are quite a few different things going on with this simple shard, so let's go ahead and break it down. So the 1/1 resource, you'll see this on all of the resources, and anything that says gain and then you have the numbers in that box with a slash in between the two of them, that has to do with resources. So the numbers on the left are temporary resources, which means this is a resource that you can use this turn, and then the numbers on the right mean it's a permanent resource. So each turn, or each time you gain a permanent resource, the total number of resources that you have to use will increase, and that's the number that gets replenished every turn cycle. So a good example for this is just basically an untapped land from Magic. So I play this Ruby shard that gives me 1 resource that I can use now, 1 resource that will refill every turn. So it's kind of like being able to untap your lands and use your mana again. And then it also gives you a Ruby threshold along with the charge. So we'll get into those later, but the charges are the mechanic for the champion powers, and the thresholds kind of unlock the cards. So to give you an example, this particular card, Deadeye Ripper, he costs 1 and requires 1 Ruby threshold to play. So if I play a Ruby shard on turn 1, then I could use my 1 resource, and I meet the requirement to play this card, so then I could play a Deadeye Ripper. Now, one of the unique aspects of the thresholds is that it basically unlocks those cards instead of you actively using the threshold to play your cards. So let's say I play Sapphire Shard. Now I have 2 temporary threshold. I have 2 temporary resource, 2 permanent resource, and 2 Sapphire thresholds. So that means that I have 2 resources that I can use this turn, and I have 2 sapphire thresholds. I wouldn't be able to play Deadeye Ripper, but if the following turn I played a ruby shard, then I would have 2 sapphire threshold, 1 ruby threshold, and 3 total resources that I could use. So then I could play 3 Deadeye Rippers. Again, I'm not actively using the thresholds to play the cards. That just unlocks the card or unlocks the ability for cards. So that's where the big difference for me was with the resource system. And once we get into some gameplay, it'll be very apparent how it works. It's not the most intuitive thing when you're just trying to describe it to somebody, especially if they come from a Magic background. But it's very intuitive and very easy to use once you actually get into the gameplay. A good Magic example that I tend to use a lot when I'm explaining this to people in real life is in Magic, if you played Island, Island, Mountain, and you had 3 lightning bolts in your hand, you could only play 1 lightning bolt by using your mountain. But in Hex, if I went Island, Island, Mountain, and had 3 lightning bolts in hand, I could just play all 3 lightning bolts because it unlocks the card instead of you actively using the colors from the thresholds to be able to play. The last part of the resource system is charges. So all of the resources, well, almost all of the resources, I don't think that there are any that don't say gain a charge yet. I imagine there will be, but when you gain a charge, and we'll see on the gameplay screen where that is symbolized, but this comes in with the different champions. So if we see here, a good example would be Urgnok. So if Urgnok is our champion, as long as we have 2 Ruby threshold, so in order to unlock this ability, we have to have Ruby, Ruby as our thresholds, we can use 2 of the charges that we've gained to give a troop a permanent +1 attack. So again, when you're playing your shards, when you're playing your lands for the turn, you're getting resources, you're getting threshold, which unlock cards, and then you're also getting charges, which will power up your champion. Now this is a really unique gameplay design, and I really, really like it. One of the things that I dislike about Magic is how Flood is extremely bad in Magic, and we've seen in the last few years they've been designing cards to help mitigate that, and decks are being designed to help mitigate that. Lands that have special abilities or different things you can do when you're flooding out tend to be extremely valuable. Cards that play well in the early game and in the late game if you're flooding out are also extremely valuable. Hex has a built-in mechanic to help protect you against flood with these champion powers. So even if you're drawing shards in the mid to late game when you don't need them, it's at the very least giving you charges towards your champion power. Some of them even just draw cards, some of them do damage, some of them can create cards to go into your hand. So there's a bunch of different champion abilities, and it's really customizable on how you build your deck, what champions you use, and that's one of the very unique aspects of the game. And we'll get into different champions once we get into that part. So just to quickly go over the resources and how they work. You're playing shards, they give you threshold, you're getting resources, and you're getting charges. Now remember I said that there's different numbers here, one on the left, one on the right. There are also shards like this, Shard of Innovation. So when you play this, you get to choose whether or not you get a ruby or a sapphire threshold, which is very important because remember, we're not actively using the colors to play our cards. When you have the threshold, it just unlocks all those cards in your hand. So you could play this, get your sapphire that you didn't have before, and use the resources that you had previously to play those sapphire cards. Because this one, as we see, there's a 0 on the left and a 1 on the right. So when you play this, you get your charge like normal. You choose a ruby or a sapphire threshold to gain, and then you get 1 permanent resource but 0 temporary resources. So this is basically a tapped dual land like we see in Magic the Gathering. So when you play your tapped dual land, you can't use that mana this turn, but on the following turn you can use it and it gives you some amount of fixing. This is the same thing. It gives you some amount of fixing where you're able to unlock a specific threshold by picking which color you get. and then it doesn't give you a resource to use this turn, but it still increases the total number of resources that you have for the future turns. So that is the resource system very quickly, a very high overview of it. It'll become extremely apparent how it works once we get into the gameplay videos. So make sure you stick around. Next, we're going to go over the different card types and then jump right into the different keywords. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and go over the different card types that there are in Hex. So in Magic the Gathering, there are different card types: instant, sorcery, creature, land, artifact, and enchantment. And then we go on, and Planeswalker was the newest one that was added to the game. In Hex, it's kind of similar. So we have Troop. It's just the same thing as a creature in Magic or a minion in Hearthstone. These are just the tangible monsters that you're using to interact with your opponent in the game. Then we have actions, and so there are two different types of actions. There are basic actions, and basic just means that you can play this on your turn anytime you have priority if the chain is empty. So let me say that again. You can play anything that says basic on it, you can play it on your turn when you have priority anytime the chain is empty. If you come from Magic, that sounds kind of similar to what a sorcery is, or something that is able to be used at sorcery speed. So anytime it's on your turn, when you have priority, if the chain is empty. That's what a basic is. And then there's a quick action, which is you can just play this anytime you have priority. That's the requirement for it. So if it's on your turn, if it's on your opponent's turn, if there's something already on the chain, then you can play the quick action, similar to what an instant is in Magic the Gathering. After that, we have constant, which is something that is played at basic speed. So anytime it's your turn, you have priority and the chain is empty, but rather than going to your crypt after the card resolves, it stays in play and just has a constant effect, hence the name constant, much like enchantments in Magic. Then we have artifact, which is the same as a constant. So you can play it on your turn when you have priority, when the chain is empty, and it also stays in play. But artifact is just another card type. So there are cards that interact with artifacts, cards that interact with troops, cards that interact with constants, similar to in Magic how there are cards that interact with creatures, artifacts, and enchantments. Now, you are able to have artifact troops. So here we have artifact troop construct. So construct is the subtype of the troop, similar to this one is an necrotic ranger, but this one is an artifact troop. So it's basically an artifact creature, like what you have in Magic. So it's just a card that has two base types. So something that affects an artifact will affect this. Something that affects a troop will also affect this. So these cards are you have a little give and take, right? So it's easier to play them because they don't have a shard requirement. They're technically colorless, shardless, but they are vulnerable to things that affect either of the card types. And then you have a resource. So you'll see cards resource standard, and then this is just a normal resource. So a resource standard is kind of like a basic land where you can have any number of them in your deck. If it doesn't say standard, then you can only have up to 4, as it's a unique type of resource. Actually, I don't want to use the term unique because that's kind of different in this game. Unique is similar to legendary, so something that's unique, you can only have one of them in play at a time. So that goes over the different card types, and let's jump right into the keywords that we're going to find on these card types, because there are quite a few of ones that are commonly found in trading card games, but there are quite a few that are unique to Hex because of its digital-only aspect. So since Hex is a game that is designed fully to be played online, digital, there are a lot of things that it can do that a traditional trading card game cannot do. So let's look at some of those normal keywords. So exhaust is something that you see on cards, and that's just the same as turning the card sideways, symbolizing that it's being used and that it cannot attack or block. So it's just like tapping in Magic. And the WoW card game, I believe, also used the term exhaust. Some of the other games use the term exhaust. I believe Magic has tap trademarked or copyrighted, so they're not able to use that on their cards, but it's the same thing as tapping. And you can see here, to use this, you would have to exhaust Runic Monolith. So Runic Monolith is a 2-cost artifact, so as long as you have 2 resources, you can play it. And you can use 2 resources, exhaust Runic Monolith to exhaust a troop, and then that troop can't ready during your next ready step. So that, basically, you pay 2, tap this, tap a creature, and that creature doesn't untap during the next untap step. Very simple to translate that over from Magic, but it's also easy enough to explain if you don't have a TCG background. Exhaust just means that it turns it sideways, and it's no longer able to attack or block or use any abilities that would require it to turn it sideways. Here we have 2 different keywords, and we're going to jump into both of them. We have Swift Strike, which is really cool. When you look at these cards, when you zoom in on them, it kind of gives you a synopsis of anything that's highlighted. So Swift Strike means that this troop deals combat damage before non-Swift Strike troops, very similar to First Strike in Magic the Gathering. And Life Drain, damage dealt by this causes its controller to gain that much health, similar to Life Link from Magic the Gathering. And that is important to note that it's just damage and not combat damage. So if for some reason this troop did damage to anything from any effect, you would gain that much health when this troop did that damage. So it's important to note that Swift Strike damage happens before normal damage. So if this troop were to attack and be blocked by something with 2 toughness or less, or 2 defense or less, then it would die, and I would gain 2 health before their troop did anything. So it's very good in combat. Next we have Flight and Steadfast. So Flight is, this troop can only be blocked by other troops with flight. So this is very similar to flying in Magic the Gathering, or horsemanship from Portal 3 Kingdoms, for those of you who have been around for 100 million years like myself. In Steadfast, this does not exhaust when it attacks. So the troop it doesn't tap to attack. So when you attack with it, it still attacks and does combat damage, but it is untapped, or in the ready state for hex terms, meaning that it can play defense on your opponent's turn, which is a very powerful way to pressure your opponent and protect your own life total. Now this card in particular, Angel of Dawn, it's one of the premier cards in the game. It's actually pretty pricey, which is you'll find some of the cards are pretty expensive, but even compared to other TCGs, it's a fraction of the cost of some of the other TCGs. But this card is a 5-cost 4/4, and you need at least 1 diamond threshold to be able to play it. But it has an extra ability that if you have a diamond threshold already, when you draw this, if it's the first card you drew this turn, you get to play it for free. So very similar to the Miracle mechanic from Magic, which is one way that I was able to correlate to this. You basically have a chance to get a free 4/4 flyer with Steadfast just by having this card in your deck, which is extremely powerful. Very, very, very powerful. Just take my word on it. Angel of Dawn is awesome. I'm not going to say it's one of my favorite cards, because I am more of a wild player. I tend to prefer to play green decks, but Angel of Dawn is very awesome. Next we have Crush, which is kind of like Trample. If this assigns more than fatal combat damage to all troops blocking it, the rest will be assigned to the defending champion. So I'm attacking, this is a 5/5, you block with a 1/1, I assign 1 damage to your 1/1, and then 4 damage will go across to the opposing champion. If I attack with a 5/5 and you block with 2 2/2s, I'll assign 2 to one, 2 to the other, and then 1 to the face. Now a unique interaction with this is how it interacts with Lethal. So Lethal is any amount of damage this deals to a troop is considered fatal. So Smashadon attacks, if this had Crush and Lethal, and you blocked with 2 2/2s, I would only have to assign 1 damage to a 2/2, because the Lethal makes that fatal. 1 damage to a 2/2, Lethal makes that fatal, and then the remainder would go across to the opposing champion. So those are 2 abilities that interact pretty uniquely. There's also lethal is also very good with Swift Strike. So we see a lot in Magic. First Strike and Death Touch is a pretty potent combination. So this is a troop, the Killipede, that's a 1/5 for 4 double blood. It already has lethal, and while it's attacking, it has Swift Strike. So while this troop is attacking, it's a 1/5 lethal Swift Strike, which basically means it's going to kill anything that blocks it before that troop would deal any combat damage back to it, which is a pretty potent card. Let's see, next here we have Speed. So Deadeye Ripper has the ability Speed, which is it can attack and use any exhaust powers the same turn it enters play. So in Hex, troops suffer what's called troop trauma, which is kind of like summoning sickness from Magic the Gathering. So when a troop comes into play, the first turn that it comes into play, it cannot attack, and it cannot use any abilities that would require it to exhaust, unless it has Speed, and then Speed lets it do everything that turn. Now, there's also an ability on here called Shift, and I'll get into Shift after I talk about Invincible. So Invincible is a very interesting one, and it's kind of unique. When I first started playing Hex, I thought that Invincible was just the same as Indestructible from Magic, but it's not. It's quite a bit different. So an indestructible creature doesn't die in Magic. An indestructible creature doesn't die from destroy effects or lethal combat damage. That's important to note, because Invincible in Hex works basically the same, except it doesn't die from destroy effects, and it doesn't take damage. So that's where the interesting part comes in. If a troop has Invincible and it's blocking a troop with lifelink or with life drain, then no damage is dealt, therefore no health will be gained from the life drain. In addition to that, if a troop with Invincible is blocking a troop that has Crush, no Crush damage will go through to the opposing champion, because there isn't any lethal damage that's being assigned to the troop that has Invincible, which is definitely a little weird. So imagine I have a 3/3 blocking a 5/5 Crush. The 5/5 Crush has to assign all 5 damage to the 3/3, because since it won't take any damage, none of it is going to be considered lethal, so none of it can actually can crush over to the opposing champion. So that's really the only, I don't want to say it's unintuitive, it was weird for me to handle, or for me to grasp it coming from a Magic the Gathering perspective. But it's really unique, it's really interesting, and creates some very interesting gameplay mechanics, and I think it makes Invincible be worth a little bit more on a card than Indestructible is in Magic. So I alluded to Shift, and we're going to jump over into some of the digital-only, the unique mechanics that you'll find in the game because it's a digital TCG. So Shift is an ability. It's basic and one-shot, so that means it's basic speed. You can use it on your turn when you have priority if the chain is empty. And one-shot means it can only happen once, and then the ability is no longer on the troop. So once you use the Shift ability, the troop will no longer have Shift, and it will no longer have the ability that you're shifting, because Shift target troop gets the following power and loses that, and this loses that power. So Deadeye Ripper, I can pay 1 resource, and I can shift speed onto another troop. Deadeye Ripper will no longer have speed, but the other troop that I just shifted it onto will have speed. Now this is very powerful and really unique, because there are a lot of troops in the game that have shift. It's basically like a necrotic tribal theme, so you'll find most of the troops with shift are necrotics, and it allows you to kind of move your abilities around to whatever is going to benefit your board state the most. And ones like this are really interesting because as a 1/1 for 1 with speed, that's playable, right? Like it's a Raging Goblin from Magic, you can get in some damage early. But as the game goes on, we now have this troop that we can shift that speed onto something else. So, let's say we play an undercosted fatty, so like a 5/5 for 4, that if we have an extra resource laying around, we can now give it speed and get in for damage out of nowhere where our opponent isn't expecting it. There's a 2/2 flyer for 3 with shift. There's a 2/2 first strike for 3 with shift. there are a lot of different cool things that happen with shift, and there are even some troops that get benefits when any power is shifted onto any of your other troops. So shift is a very unique mechanic. You're only going to find it in something that's fully digital, and I'm really excited to see how they go about utilizing it in further sets. So there's not a lot of things in this game that are taking advantage of alternate means of resources or using different things as resources, right? So there isn't anything that lets you pay life as a cost for something, or instead of a cost for something. So like I can imagine cards in the future that are like shift discard a card as the cost to do the shift, or shift pay 2 life as the cost to do the shift. So things like that, really interesting, open up a lot of design space. But you have to be careful, because we've seen in the past from other TCGs, anytime you're able to trade one resource for another, it has the potential to become broken. The next mechanic I want to look at is tunneling. So this is very wordy, so I'll go ahead and read it and then break it down for you how I understood it. So tunneling, you can tunnel this card by paying its tunneling cost anytime you can play a basic action. So there we go, it's a basic speed, your turn, have priority, chain is empty. Tunneling this card puts it underground. An underground card remains hidden from your opponent until it surfaces, so it goes face down onto the field. An underground card cannot be affected by cards that affect cards in play. At the start of your turn, each underground card with tunneling gets a tunneling counter. An underground card surfaces when the number of tunneling counters on it is greater than or equal to its tunneling number. When an underground card surfaces, it is played for free immediately and gets speed until the end of turn. So, for those of you who come from Magic the Gathering, this sounds exactly like Suspend. So in Magic, when a card that has Suspend, you pay the Suspend costs, and then it gets exiled face up with a number of counters on it equal to whatever the Suspend number is, and then each turn, one of those counters gets removed, and then when the last counter is removed, the card gets played immediately, and if it's a creature, it gets haste. So this is the exact same as Suspend, with one little tweak. If you go past the turn or the number of counters that normally would allow you to play the card, it still gets played. Whereas with Suspend, it's like if you miss that chance to play it, then you can no longer suspend it. This one, it feels kind of different. There aren't any cards that interact with it in that way, but it is worded that if it has more than the number of tunneling counters, then it gets played. So I imagine that might come into play. But this is face down, so not only is it similar to Suspend, but it's also similar to Morph. So this definitely is an interesting mechanic. You'll find it primarily on Dwarves, but there are some other cards that have it, Dwarves and Shinhairs, I mean, but there are some other cards that might have it. But I really like tunneling. It's a really cool mechanic, and it's one of the few ways that lets you kind of cheat on resources, right? So like in Magic, finding ways to cheat on mana and cheat cards with their mana cost is really cool. In Hex, tunneling is one of the few ways that you can do that. So you're able to pay a reduced upfront cost, and then when the time comes, then you get to play that card for free, freeing up resources for you to interact with your opponent when you play the card. So it's definitely an interesting mechanic. One of the few things that you could really only do this digitally because the card is hidden, so your opponent's not able to see it. So in real life, having hidden cards can always lead to potential abuse, and you have to be able to verify things. But in Hex, you don't, because the client actually just takes care of it all. So tunneling is real sweet. I really like it. It's really interesting. Next, we have Rage. So Rage is just a very simple Rage and then a number. And when this troop attacks, it gets plus X plus 0, where X is the Rage number. So when this troop attacks, it gets plus 1 attack, and that's permanent, so it stays on the troop. So I attack the first turn, it's a 1-2, next turn it's a 2-2, next turn it's a 3-2, and this troop can't be blocked by troops with attack less than its attack, so at some point it's just going to become unblockable, which is a pretty cool card. Looks like next we have Inspire. So Azure Fate Sorceress is one of the most unique cards in Hex. In fact, in my opinion, it's basically the flagship card for showcasing what you can do in a digital game. And it has a bunch of stuff going on, so let's break it down. Not only does Azure Fate Sorceress have Inspire, but it has 2 gem sockets, and that's one of the unique aspects of Hex TCG, is that cards with gem sockets, you're able to put different gems in it, and as long as you meet the threshold requirements, so as long as you unlock those abilities, then the card will gain those abilities. So you're able to customize your cards based off of what colors you're playing in your deck, what champion you have, what your deck is trying to do. And so sockets really give you a way to customize your deck. So let's go ahead and break down Azure Fate Sorceress. First I want to look at is Inspire. So as another troop with cost equal to or greater than this troop's cost enters play under your control, that troop gets all socketed powers of this. So whatever gems you have in Azure Fate Sorceress, whenever you have a troop that costs greater than or equal to whatever this card costs, so currently she's 4, that troop will get all of the socketed powers. So as you can see here, there are 2 minor and 2 major gems in each color. So Blood has 2, Diamond has 2, Ruby has 2, Sapphire has 2, Wild has 2. She's socketable major, socketable minor. So that means we can have major and minor gems in her. Some might only say socketable major, some might only say socketable minor. That's where the customization and design comes in. But some of the most powerful ones are ones that just give keyword abilities. So like Blood can let you give it Rage, Diamond can be Swift Strike or Life Drain, Ruby can be Speed, Sapphire can be Quick or Flight. Wild can be Spell Shield or just a flat +1/+1. So the majority of the time you're going to find Azure Fate Sorceress will have sockets that either protect it somehow so that the other creatures, the other troops that you play are protected, or a way to give it Quick, which makes it at instant speed, and then have an ability when it enters the battlefield. So there are 2 main ones, to be honest. So there's a Subterfuge Sapphire gem that when this enters play, you bury cards from the top of each opponent's deck equal to this troop's combined attack plus defense. So when this comes into play, it mills them for 4. And then you can use Quick, which basically makes it, you can play it on your opponent's turn. There's another one that's extremely powerful, that Spell Shield, so it can't be targeted by opposing cards and effects, which it looks like I forgot to touch on Spell Shield. So yeah, Spell Shield is hexproof from Magic, and it's extremely powerful, especially since Azure Fate Sorceress can have Spell Shield and then give the other big troops, or troops that meet the cost requirements, Spell Shield, which is extremely powerful. And then you also have a Ruby gem that makes it deal damage to an opposing champion. Destruction. When it enters play, it deals damage equal to its attack to target opposing champion, which is extremely powerful. So, but we can see here, Azure Fate requires Sapphire to play, but then the gems we're looking at require double Wild and a single Ruby. So the gems are very powerful, but you still have to meet the requirements to take advantage of them. And it's important to note that you can only have up to 4 of any one given gem in your deck at a time. So if you have a bunch of troops that have gem slots in them, you can only have up to 4 of any one given gem in your deck at a time. So that is definitely very important. And the last mechanic that I want to look at is Revert. So Cleanse here just reverts all cards. So unfortunately there isn't a Revert isn't highlighted, and I kind of wish that it was. So what Revert does is it takes every card, like a card that's being reverted is just changed back to its original state. So if something is transformed, or if something has been buffed, or if something has damage on it for that turn, then Cleanse will revert all of those cards back to their original state, which is kind of cool. Like Azure Fate Sorceress will give another troop spell shield. If you use cleanse, it reverts all of them back to normal. So that's, Revert can be extremely powerful, and there are some tricky ways to use it that we'll see with some of the decks that are listed in some gameplay videos. So let's go ahead and take a look at the actual field that you play the game on, and just go through a game so we can kind of see how the gameplay works and how the different card types and resource system interact along with our champion and the champion's abilities. So make sure you stay tuned for the next part where we look at the actual gameplay, go over the game zones, and see how the game itself works. Hello everybody, let's go ahead and take a look at how the actual field looks when you're playing a game, and just kind of go through a game to see how everything interacts and the gameplay actually goes. So this is just the home screen in Hex, if you will. A bunch of different things that you can access to here. Here you can go to the in-game store where you can buy packs and platinum and sealed decks. You can redeem codes if you happen to win any codes from like stream giveaways and whatnot. Here we have the actual in-game auction house where you can buy and sell cards from other players for both currencies in the game, gold and platinum. Here you have your inventory stash where you can see like your chests and different packs that you have, as well as just a bunch of other cool things. Here you have your mailbox, and then here you have options where you can change the resolution and the sounds and all of that thing. So where we're going to go is here under Battleground. So campaign, this will take you to the campaign screen for the PvE action. Store, this will take you to the same button is up here. Collection, this is where you go to build your different decks. So we can see here, this is the deck that we're going to be playing in our video here. This is a $5 blue-red deck, Ruby Sapphire, using Morgan McBombus. So we'll go ahead and get into what that is here when we play the game, but we're going to go under Battlegrounds. Now under Tournaments is where you would go to join the different queues for tournaments, draft, sealed, constructed, etc., etc. Play random opponent just lets you play a game against somebody. Zero stakes, just have some fun. And then under player versus AI is where we're going to go. So you can replay the tutorial, which is the first thing I recommend people do when they get the game. Download it, hop in, go through the tutorial to learn everything. Practice just lets you play against a random AI opponent to test your deck. But in Frostring Arena, this is something that's completely free, and you're going to fight against a series of progressively difficult AI opponents in the Frostring Arena, and then you get prizes based off how many opponents you beat. So not only is this a good way just to practice your deck, get an idea for how things feel, but you can also earn things in the arena, gold that you can use to trade into platinum to play in PvP, or you can just use it to buy things off of the auction house to get cards for your decks, which is pretty cool. The other unique part about the Frostring Arena is that the PvE only cards are usable. So there are a set of cards that are only usable in the PvE campaign that you can't use in like your competitive constructed decks, but you can use them in the Frostring Arena, which is kind of cool. So you can like get some powerful decks and practice things there. But I generally use it just to practice with my constructed decks for PvP if I don't have somebody to play against. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to take our $5 McBombus deck and we're going to run it through the Frostring Arena. So welcome to the Frostring. It would appear that another aspiring combatant heeded my global summons. You traversed the serrated peaks of the Hyperborean Mountains, dodged the boulders thrown by angry yetis, and outran the hammers of the avalanche giants. Yet your true challenges lie ahead, my friend. So we're going to go ahead and skip the intro. We're going to select our deck. It's that Nickel Life. We're going to play our $5 McBombus deck. And so we're going to battle our first champion. So this is what the battle screen looks like. So when you play PvP, the background is going to be different. So it's not going to be like this frost background, because that's what the Frostring Arena is. But this is generally what you're going to expect. On the right, you're going to have your deck and how many cards are left in it. Next to your deck, you're going to have your Crypt will be here, which is the graveyard. Here you have the Void, which is similar to Exile from Magic. Here we have the cards that are in our hand, and then how many cards in hand, These are going to be our different thresholds that we have unlocked. These are going to be our resources. Over here we'll see how many charges we have. And then this is our champion with our health. So each champion has varying starting health, going from 17 up through like 25, not including 20. So there isn't a champion that has 20 starting health because that is trademarked by Magic the Gathering. So we're not going to find that the champion has 20 starting health. So as we can see here with our opening hand, we have 3 shards, 2 sapphire, and a ruby. We have Crackling Wit, which is a 2-cost single sapphire, quick action, draw a card, gain a charge. We have Lanupaw's Sight, which is 3-cost single sapphire, basic action, and this has a digital-only mechanic called Prophecy. So the next action, resource, and troop in my deck, so the next land, instant or sorcery, and creature in my deck gets when you play this draw card. So this is basically a draw 3, but spread out over 3 cards. But the unique part is that that draw card stays on those cards permanently. So let's say I play a spell, or let's say the action that has draw card on it has some way for it to come back to my hand. When I play it again, I'll then get to draw another card. So it's extremely powerful. Here we have Crackling Bolt, like we saw in the earlier introduction. 2-cost, single ruby, basic action, 3 damage to a champion or troop, and then I gain a charge. And then Seeing Red, 1-cost, single ruby, target troop gets +3 attack and must attack. And that's a permanent, so it just gets +3, and then it has to attack every turn, which is pretty unique. Now, Morgan McBombus's champion ability, as long as I have a ruby and a sapphire threshold at basic speed, which is my turn, as long as the chain is clear and I have priority, and the chain is the same thing basically as the stack in Magic. If I played an action this turn, I can use 3 charges and I get a Bumblebot, which is just a 1/1 flying speed artifact troop. It's a robot insect, so I just get to make 1/1 flyers for free. If I played an action this turn, and I can consume 3 charges. So our opponent is Dragon Guard Stalwart. So you'll find in the PvE campaign, the champions that you play against have like special abilities and like different champion powers. So you can't choose this champion in your deck for constructed, but the purpose of this portion of the video is just to show you how our cards work together and how a game is actually played. So for this particular champion, whenever he gains health, a random troop in his deck gets +1/+1, and he can consume 1 charge as long as he has 1 diamond threshold to gain a life. So we're going to keep our hand because it's pretty sweet. And so you are able to mulligan if you want, so to draw again, and then you just draw 1 less card. So you mulligan from 7 to 6 to 5 all the way down, similar to the Paris mulligan rules in Magic. And so he won the die roll, or the coin flip, so he's going to get to go first. And we have the little pass party button, so it looks like he's going to play a 1/1 for 1, that he can pay 1 resource, exhaust it to gain 1 health. So you can just pay a mana, basically, tap that, gain a health. I'm going to use his champion ability to gain a health. He goes up to 15, and then passes back to us. So we're just going to play a Ruby Shard. So it gives us 1/1 on resources, 1 temporary, 1 permanent, and then 1 Ruby Threshold. So now these cards, these single Ruby cards, have been unlocked. And you'll notice that these 2 Seeing Red cards are kind of highlighted in my hand. And that's because right now, this moment, I can play those cards. So it's kind of neat how it kind of highlights and just shows you what you can play. So we're going to go to our end turn. So the phases are over here, very similar to Magic. You have our ready step where you unexhaust everything and draw a card. Your first main phase, your combat, attack, defense, damage, second main phase, and then end of your turn. So very simple, very easy phases for the turn. And so you can pass priority either using hotkeys, like spacebar is clicks on this for you, or you can click on it manually yourself. So we're just taking some damage. He's going to gain another health from his champion power and just proceed to end of turn. Looks like he doesn't have a 2-drop to play. So we're going to be a little tricky here on our turn. So we're going to play our Sapphire Shard. So that's going to give us Ruby Sapphire. And then now we're going to be at 2 and 2 on our resources. So we're going to play Cackling Wit. So even though it's quick speed, we're going to do it on our turn to draw a card and gain a charge. Now that's going to put us at 3 charges and make it so that we've played an action this turn, which will allow us to make a Bumblebot from McBombus. So we're going to go ahead and attack with our Bumblebot. He doesn't have any flyers, so he can't block, and he's going to take 1 point of damage down to 15, and we'll just pass the turn back. So he plays another Diamond Shard. He's up to 3, and he's going to play a Spearcliff Pegasus, which is a 3-cost, single threshold, 2/1 flyer. When it enters play, gain 2 health. So it's just a 2/1 flying for 3. When it comes into play, he gains 2. So he's just going to attack us. We're going to go down to 20. And then he's going to gain another health from his champion ability. And now on our turn, we're going to do a bunch of damage here. So we're going to play another Ruby Shard. It's going to bring our threshold up to 2. Doesn't matter, we don't have anything in our hand that needs 2 threshold. But now we have 3 resources this turn. So we have a couple different options. I can combat training this, which it's 1 cost, single Ruby threshold. It's a basic action. Target troop gets +1 attack, and then when this deals combat damage to an opposing champion, you put all combat trainings in your crypt into your hand. So that's really cool and works very well with this card, which gives an attacking troop +2/+2 and crush this turn. So we kind of have to figure out how we can do the most damage to our opponent this turn. So if we do Seeing Red, it will make it a 4/1. And then we can do another Seeing Red, which will make it a 7/1. And then when he blocks with this, we can Crushing Blow, which will make it a 9/3. So that's going to get through 8 points of damage, which is a lot. So I think we kind of just want to do that. So let's Seeing Red our Bumblebot. We're going to Seeing Red our Bumblebot. And then we're going to attack with our Bumblebot. And let's see if he blocks. And then we can Crushing Blow our Bumblebot, which is going to make it a 9/3 with Crush. So it's going to kill this Pegasus, do 8 points of damage, bring him down to 10. And now we just have this 7/1 that he has to deal with. So he's going to play a Diamond Shard and go up to 4. He's going to attack us for 1. We can't block. It doesn't matter. We're just trying to race at this point. He has another Officer. Going to gain another health. And then just end the turn. So if he has nothing here, we actually just get to kill him. So we're going to play a Sapphire Shard. We're going to combat training our Bumblebot. Actually, we should have combat training a new Bumblebot, because we're going to Crackling Bolt the Stalwart, and then make another Bumblebot, because the bolt will deal 3 damage, give us a charge to bring us up to 3, and then suffice the play in action this turn. But now we're just going to attack for 9. He's at 8. Combat damage is going to be dealt, and we're going to win our game. So in this, you just play 1 game in the Frostring Arena. You're not going to use your reserves at all. It shows you what you win. And then you just go on to your next battle. So we have all of these that we can play, and it gets harder and harder as you go along. I'm going to go ahead and save and quit so that I can show you guys that what the reserves look like. So you do have your reserves. So a constructed deck in Hex is 60 main deck cards and 15 reserve cards. And then in between, like after the first game, you can swap any number of cards from your reserves into your main deck and take out any number. So we have just cards that do different things. Arcane Zephyr gives the troop flight and spell shield, so you can save something. Vandalize just destroys an artifact. So yeah, this is just a $5 deck. It's done. Actually, people have gotten 5 wins with it in Gauntlets, which is pretty insane that you can play a deck for only $5. But yeah, that's a very, very easy, very high-level view of how the gameplay actually works. So I hope that helped you guys understand some things a little bit more, and Hex is definitely something that you look into. Well, everybody, I hope you really enjoyed my first introductory into Hex video. I'm going to be making some more that go over draft and sealed and like the actual constructed tournament formats. And I may even jump into some PvE stuff. I haven't had a chance to play it very much because I enjoy the competitive aspect a little bit more than almost anything else in TCGs when I play them. But the little bit that I've played in the PvE on Hex has been awesome and very fun, and very likely that I'm going to check that out as well. So in this video, we just went over the resource system, the different card types in the game, along with all of the keywords that you'll find commonly found in normal TCGs, as well as some of the online-only uniqueness that you'll find in this digital TCG. We also went over the gems in the game, which is a really cool mechanic, and I'm really happy that they put it in. And I've heard rumors that we might have rotations of gems, so old ones leaving, new ones coming in, which is really sweet, keeps things fresh and new. Plus, Spell Shield gem is pretty busted, in my opinion. Then we also went over what the gameplay board looked like in the different zones. You have your hand, in play, your deck, crypt, the void, as well as the chain, and then you have your champion ability with the different charges. In the description below, I'm going to put some different links, not only a link to my article on Hex Primal, basically going over the same thing that I did here, but in straight text form, but also a link to my content on hextcg.com. I do have a weekly column you can check out there every Thursday. You can also check me out on Twitter, if you look above. It's Chris_VanMeter, also Twitch. It's Chris_VanMeter for my stream. I stream Magic the Gathering and Hex every week, so you can check that out. As well as like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm going to be doing a lot more content, both Hex and Magic the Gathering. Games are growing. I'm trying to grow along with them, and we're just going to try and grow this channel to be much more than what it already is. So thank you very much for watching the video. I hope that this helps you in your Hexland adventure, same as that I've been going on with. Game's great, gameplay is fun, the limited format especially is just perfect if you enjoyed playing limited in any other TCGs, and I can't wait to do some videos for that to show you guys just how fun it is. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and you guys have a wonderful day.